I have two children in Vancouver Island, both of whom, for some misguided reason, say they want to be a lawyer. Both of whom want to be the Prime Minister. Both of whom, Mr. Prime Minister, are women.
Tell them I'll stick around till they're ready.
In 1983, Indigenous leader Bill Wilson told Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau that his daughters wanted to lead the country. Decades later, one of them would help reshape Canada's justice system.
In 2015, Jody Wilson-Raybould was one of the candidates that stood for election under the Liberal banner of doing politics differently. She won her British Columbia seat and was rewarded by the new Prime Minister with one of the top cabinet portfolios, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Then came the SNC-Lavalin controversy, and suddenly she found herself in the maelstrom that is the biggest scandal to have hit the Trudeau government. And of course, she's no longer a Liberal. Jody Wilson-Raybould has also just published a new book called From Where I Stand, Rebuilding Indigenous Nations for a Stronger Canada. Today, she's running as an independent in her riding of Vancouver-Granville, and we're pleased to have Jody Wilson-Raybould onto our program from Vancouver, BC tonight. Nice to have you back on our program.
It's nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
There will be a bunch of people watching us tonight who, for whatever reason, don't believe that reconciliation with First Nations is a priority in the country and ought not to be. And I'm wondering what you can say to them to make them reconsider that view.
Indigenous peoples have been here since prior to Confederation. They're the fastest growing population in this country. And Section 35, our recognition of Aboriginal and treaty rights, are in the Constitution. And when we create the space for Indigenous peoples to be self-determining, have the right to be self-determining, including self-government, we enable those nations to rebuild within a stronger Canada. It is reconciliation with Indigenous peoples is the unfinished business of Confederation that for us, for all Canadians, should be a priority. Indigenous issues are fundamentally interconnected with a whole range of issues, whether we're looking at climate change and sustainability, development on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples. It's an issue that needs to be addressed. Thankfully, Canadians, through reading reports of Truth and Reconciliation, the Murdered and Missing Women's Inquiry, are becoming more aware, taking an active interest and participating in moving towards true reconciliation. And I think that is an incredible opportunity for the country. I was raised to believe in equality and inclusion and to speak the truth, which are teachings that have guided me through the various roles that I have had, including being the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of Canada. In my culture, which is an oral culture, if one doesn't speak the truth, then the culture dies.
As a member of the Weewakai Nation, she was raised with a deep understanding of leadership, responsibility, and Indigenous law. Indigenous leadership is rooted in community, accountability, and respect for future generations. Before entering politics, she worked to advance Indigenous self-governance and legal recognition across Canada. In 2015, she became Canada's first Indigenous Minister of Justice, bringing Indigenous perspectives into federal law. But leadership is not just about position, it's about integrity.
We are, of course, seeing right now around the world in places like Ukraine, those who risk their very lives to uphold the values and well-being that must be protected. I think of the constructive resilience of First Nations women and the integral role that they play in their communities as we transition during this period of governance reform and Indigenous nation rebuilding to address the legacy of colonialism. They are the forces of change in our Indigenous communities. Having to speak out about the rule of law and governments not adhering to principles as they should, this was not a choice. And again, I am surmising, and you can correct me if I'm wrong later, but I imagine within your own life, in your business or organizations, there have been times where you have been confronted by others acting badly, not upholding fundamental principles or rules, and you have had to make choices about what to do, to speak out, to lead, to push for change subtly or directly, to be an example of change, to ensure there is coherence and consistency between the values you were raised with, taught, and hold dear, and the values of how people act and treat one another within your organization, business, or community.
Her actions reflected a deeper principle, which was leadership must serve truth, community, and future generations. Indigenous leadership looks forward 7 generations ahead, guiding decisions that shape the future. Jody Wilson-Raybould's story reminds us that leadership is not about power. In the spirit of Indigenous leadership and grounded in resilience and care for the community, your leadership reflects strength and community, and I'd like to wish you strength and healing on your journey, and thank you for your example.